Both candidates were asked and spoke at length about abortion. And so I want to throw it to you because I know you had some concerns about the way the issue, not only their answers, but the way the issue was characterized.
The abortion issue came up very quickly. And I think what really needs to be said right up front is, again, the misinformation that was communicated needs to be corrected. And I think pro-lifers need to be really, really clear about this. And part of that is because when there were things that were said by President Trump that were immediately fact-checked, in which what he said actually was either true or not false in the way that the fact checkers, which by the way, they were moderators. They weren't supposed to be fact checkers, but they did that to him. And then things that the candidate Harris said that just flat out weren't true and were not fact checked. For example, that women going through miscarriages couldn't get health care. That is not what the overturning of Roe v. Wade did. That is not what these state laws that were triggered or put into place after Roe have done. That is just not the case. Basically refusing to answer whether she was willing to limit abortion limit late-term abortions. And she basically said that there wasn't 7th, 8th, and 9th month abortions in under Roe, which flat out isn't true, and it still is here. I know this because it's Colorado. I had a conversation this week with someone whose husband is a ER doc and has had 2 patients in the last year come in and ask for 9 abortions in the 9th month. Unwilling, obviously, to provide that, the hospital sends these 2 women across the street in this particular town in Colorado, where they have just set up a late-term abortion clinic with a famous late-term abortionist running the show. When President Trump said that there were babies being slaughtered after birth, that's not exactly correct. But the denial by the moderator to say that there's no late-term after birth abortions happening in the U.S., Vice presidential nominee Tim Walz signed a bill in Minnesota denying care to babies born alive. And it's been documented, at least 8 cases of babies born alive. 5 of them received no care whatsoever. 3 received comfort care. This according to the live action reports on this. All 8 of them died. That is late-term abortion. When he quoted Governor Northam of Virginia, he called it West Virginia. That's where he should have been fact-checked. It was Virginia. This was the previous governor of Virginia, basically saying that's what we want here. We want, if a baby is born alive after a botched abortion, we set the baby aside and then decide what we're going to do with it. I mean, that's the language of what do you call it? After birth? I mean, that's an accurate term for it, although it's even then it's a euphemism for essentially withholding care from a living, breathing human being outside of the womb. So all of these things were repeated. President Trump was asked about IVF. He called it fertility 3 times. It was a weird thing. He's like, I'm for fertility. I'm for fertility. I don't know what he meant by that, because not all fertility treatments are the same. Vice presidential candidate Tim Walz claims that his fertility treatment with his family was IVF. It wasn't. It was fertility treatment that no pro-lifer has any qualms or hesitations about whatsoever. Process of stimulating the ovaries to produce eggs, as I understand it, and doesn't involve the creation of excess embryos. IVF, as currently practiced, and President Trump now has said that he will have a, taxpayer funded. Look, that is the same kind of HHS mandate that was sued under the Obama administration. I imagine will be sued if President Trump is elected again and he tries to do that, because this is not fertility. IVF is actually leading to the death of more whole human beings at a early stage of development called embryos than abortion, than what we call abortion does, and as has been and as is currently practiced. So it's an unregulated industry, and it's not accurate to call it fertility. So the fact checking that should have happened around the abortion issue didn't happen. Mm-hmm. And there's no other way forward than to kind of, articulate that. This is what was claimed. It ain't true. This is what the truth is around these issues and these claims. And I think I covered them all, but I may have missed some others.
I'm going to pretend to be an alien just dropped into the discourse and ask, why are we as a country so obsessed with this issue? Demographically, it's a relatively small-ish segment of the population that is a woman of childbearing age, right?
Yeah.
Why does this dominate so many of our political conversations?
Yeah, because we are late stream or downstream in kind of the late age of the sexual revolution, in which our technology has enabled our ideas and the fundamental idea of sexual autonomy. And we will do all kinds of flip-flops on sexuality that we won't do on any other issue. Case in point, Kristen Dumais, a professor at a Christian college in the United States this week, and justifying abortion, was doing these kind of parsements around when an embryo is ensouled, is what, ensouled, E-N-S-O-U-L. In other words, we don't know when the soul enters the body. So even if she's right, which, by the way, the Bible draws no distinction between the body and the soul in that way, that is a Gnostic position historically understood. These conversations certainly were being had before, philosophically, before we had any sort of understanding of fertilization and of course, that's the group that says, follow the science, follow the science. Well, let's follow the science. The science of embryology says when conception happens, a new human being is created. So to draw a distinction between a human being and a human being that doesn't have a soul yet, shouldn't we err at the very best in caution? And based on that same arrangement, should we then fiddle around with when people lose a certain degree of memory or certain degree of capacity or something like that because of a disease or old age, then we should, off them in order to quote unquote be compassionate? That's what needs to be recognized here. This isn't secular voices like Kamala Harris and others that are just saying this. You have quote unquote evangelical voices that are doing flip flops to justify this using theoretical theology, that is completely ignoring the science, which they're telling us to follow. And yes, I'll say the evangelical history of this in the 20th century was mixed, and some of it was wrong. Some of the great Christian thinkers got this wrong. And thank God for Francis Schaeffer coming over and getting it right and pushing the evangelical church to get it right and to catch up with the Roman Catholics on this. The sort of flip-flopping we do is what happens when you are captivated by the political illusion. The critique has been the right has been captivated by the political illusion, and some have. But the evangelical left right now, I know we weren't specifically talking about the evangelical left, but they have been captivated by the political illusion every bit as much or more. And you see it when, in order to justify a political position, they do this sort of theological wrangling that they don't do on any other issue.
The only other thing I want to say about that is that, in my experience, women who are actually dealing with crisis pregnancies, like if you want to be outraged on their behalf or you want to be concerned about their wants and needs, then be outraged about the normalcy, the cultural normalcy and accepting of men abandoning them. That is their chief concern 99% of the time, is that the man involved in their life has either abandoned them or is pressuring them to get an abortion. So if you want to talk about what women need and want, go that route. And that's where I'll believe you that you deeply care about this issue. Women who come into the crisis pregnancy center where I volunteer are not asking me when their child's soul entered its body. They're telling me that the man who got them pregnant is uninvolved or is pressuring them to end the pregnancy. It's a really important point. And none of that justifies the woman's own decision to commit sexual sin or to go down this path, that the decision to abort a child is not justified by someone else's sin against you. And I know you believe that. Anecdotally, the stories that I heard this week about 9 abortions in the 9th month that's happening in Colorado, and this is just a single doctor at a single hospital. So multiply that times however many doctors at however many hospitals and ER rooms, across the state. And that's the story. We were going to have this child. He left me. I don't want it now.
And that's not just anecdotes, by the way. We now statistically know this, right? Where there has been some, at least attempts to approach data of 60 to 70% of women who've had abortions point to that as a factor. And this is Frederica Matthews Green, absolutely accurate line from the Marriage Project years ago, or the Family Project years ago, where she said, women were promised autonomy. What they got was abandonment in the sexual revolution. Mm-hmm. This is the fruit of that bad idea.